Hello, and welcome to Books of the Book. I'm so excited that you're able to join us in this Bible study. My name is Davey Rodriguez, and we are studying the Gospel of John. And with us is Dr. John Pauline, that's Jon. We're not studying your gospel, right?
No, it's not my gospel. I don't have an H in my name.
The last time we were talking about the Gospel of John, we left off saying that John has a particular purpose in this gospel, and we read, and that was found in John chapter 20 and verses 30 and 31, and I will read it. And it says, "And truly Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book." And the purpose is in the next verse. "But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about this purpose.
In the Greek language, which is the foundation for all four of these Gospels, there's special forms for purpose. There's actually several of them, but one of the clearest ones is right here in this verse. These things are written. In other words, I didn't write about a lot of things, but the ones I wrote about in order that you might believe, and in order that believing you might have life. So the purpose of the gospel is stated right here, that he has selected things which will help you to believe. Now, we've always taken this as all of us. He's writing to us. But actually, John has a more specific audience in mind. And it's when we discover that more specific audience that I think this gospel will become extremely exciting. Going to explain why it's the favorite gospel of so many people, because of the purpose that John had. So the question ultimately is, who is you that he's referring to? Who is the person that should read this gospel and believe? Let's go back earlier and look at verses 24 through 28. Would you read that first, Davey?
We're still in chapter 20.
Still in chapter 20, yeah, verses 24 through 28.
"Now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, 'We have seen the Lord.' So he said to them, 'Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the prints of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe.' And after 8 days, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas with them. Jesus came, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, 'Peace to you.' Then he said to Thomas, 'Reach your finger here, and look at my hands, and reach your hand here, and put it into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believing.' And Thomas answered and said to him, 'My Lord and my God.'"
Good answer, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, but what did he need to come to that answer?
Faith. He needed to do something. He needed to believe.
He needed to see. He needed to touch. He needed Jesus physically present there. You see, that's the setting of this purpose statement. Now come to verse 29. Thomas says, "I'll never believe. If I can't see him, if I can't touch him, I'm not going to believe." Now look at verse 29. "Then Jesus told him, 'Because you have seen me, you have believed.'" Check mark. Jesus is okay with that. But look what he says. "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." You see, it's good. Thomas, was able to believe now that he had Jesus present, but you and I don't. How are we supposed to believe in Jesus? If we held the same standard that Thomas had, we would never believe. So John recognizes that there's going to be people in the history of the world who will not have the privilege of walking with Jesus and touching him and seeing him the way these disciples had. These people will need to learn to believe without sight and without touch. Now this gets even more exciting if you go to chapter 21, because chapter 21 gives us the context of this whole story. And verses, would you read 20 through 23?
Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following. who also had leaned on his breast at the supper and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, But Lord, what about this man? Jesus said to him, If I will that he remain till I come, what is it that to you? You follow me.
Okay, hold it right there. See, here you have the story that's told of Jesus walking on the beach with Peter. And they're having a conversation. We can get into that in a later program. But in the middle of this conversation, Peter notices that there's another disciple following. And that disciple, we're going to discover eventually, is actually the author of this book. And we call him John. So Jesus is looking back at this other disciple and saying, you've talked to me about where I'm going in life. What about him? And Jesus says, none of your business. And he says, take care of yourself, kind of like. But now notice verse 23, because this is an interesting window into the history.
Then this saying went out among the brethren that this disciple would not die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he would not die, but if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you?
Now my version even says the rumor went abroad. In the Greek, it's just a saying or a word, a saying went around. This is the context of this gospel. You see, people evidently remembered and told this story, how Jesus walking on the beach, talking about John, said, if I decide he will live till I come, what is that to you? And they thought about that, and they said, hey, John's not going to die. Jesus will come before John dies. So the rumor's going out. Now here's the problem. John is getting old. We feel the gospel was probably written about 70 years after the cross. So he might have been 90, 85, 90, maybe even more. So either he's going to die soon or Jesus is going to come. What's going to happen if people believe that rumor and John dies? Be devastating. So the context in which this gospel is written is the impending death of its author, and he is preparing the people for a time when he won't be there. Now, who is John? He's the last living disciple. All the other disciples are dead. He is the last link with Jesus. He is the last person alive who saw Jesus, touched him, heard his voice. Can you imagine the loss? When he dies, the church will feel like our link to Jesus is gone. What are we going to do? So this gospel is addressed to another generation. The first generation is the generation that walked and talked with Jesus. The next generation is a generation that had no physical contact, no sight, no sound, no hearing, no touch. And yet they were struggling to go on with their faith. It is for that generation that this was written. And let me show you a couple of places in which this occurs. John 17. It's very exciting when I discovered this. It just blew my mind. In John chapter 17, verse 2, Jesus says, you have granted him, speaking of himself, authority over all people that he might give eternal life to all those you have given him. Here in the first part of this chapter, Jesus is praying, and he prays for himself. Father, glorify me as you were glorified. So he prays for himself. Then notice verse 12. While I was with them, I protected them and kept them safe by the name you gave me. Who is them? He's talking about the disciples. Okay? So he prays for himself. Now he prays for his disciples. In every other gospel, that would be it. But look at verse 20. My prayer is not for them alone. Oh, who besides the disciples does he want to pray for? I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. So Jesus now prays for a second group, not the ones that were with him, but those who came to believe through the disciples' message. How did you and I come to believe? Through the disciples' message, through these Gospels. That's how we came to believe. We never touched Jesus. We never heard his voice. We never were able to see him physically. Wouldn't you love to have Jesus at your house? Wouldn't it be neat if every time you get into trouble, you can go into the back room and you can tell your troubles to Jesus, and he can kneel down and he can pray for you and raise up his voice to the Father in heaven?
And every time I get sick, I just need his touch.
Yeah.
And I'm healed.
We somehow think we'd be better off if Jesus were with us physically. John is saying, no. Jesus already knew about you. He already prayed for you when he was here.
So the first, or that first generation, I don't know if it's the first, but that generation who saw and saw Jesus' miracles, do they have an advantage over us, or do they not?
That's the question of this gospel. No other gospel addresses this. Paul doesn't address it. I don't know of any other place in the Bible. But here in the Gospel of John, it addresses this whole question of are we at a disadvantage? What about those people that don't have a living disciple with them? Can words on a page make that much of a difference? You see, when you go to chapter 15, and we won't take time to do that right now, but in chapter 15, Jesus tells a story. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Who's he talking to? He's talking to his disciples. Now, you and I tend to read that story and say, oh, he's the vine, I'm the branches, I got to stay close to Jesus. Follow the whole story. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Who's he talking to? His disciples. If you could stay connected to me, if you remain in me, you will what? Bring forth a lot of fruit. Who's the fruit? They're the people who believed from the disciples' testimony. The disciples believe because they're connected to the physical Jesus. We've come to believe because we're connected to the disciples.
That's interesting, because I always thought that the fruit represented more like the fruit of the Spirit. Joy, love, peace, patience, suffer, and so now you're saying that the fruit represents other disciples that by their word they bring to Christ.
Well, in John 10:16, Jesus says, other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. You know, disciples are only part of who he's ministering to. I thought the same thing, Davey. But when I came to realize how John is focused in on this second generation, it changed everything. Now I suddenly realize, yeah, he's talking to the disciples and saying, you stay connected to me, and then you will be able to bear fruit. That fruit is the second generation. In chapter 21, the disciples are out fishing. Jesus directs them, and what happens? They catch 153 fish. See, the disciples are the ones going out collecting the fish. We are the fish. The second generation is the fish. They're the ones that have no direct connection with Jesus, but it tells us Jesus is directing their conversion. Even though he's not physically present. He's at a distance, but he can still accomplish everything we need, even at a distance.
So do you think it would be fair to say that that generation had no advantage over, let's say, for example, us?
I think before we're done with this particular program, we might discover that it's an advantage not to have Jesus physically present.
I want to know more about that.
All right.
And why?
Okay.
Well, we're going to continue picking up on the Gospel of John with Dr. John Pauline after this short break.